that this is commitment, and this is competence. See, you can read competence. So, and the arrows go this way, on a scale of 1 to 100, or whatever you want to call it, that your ones are competent, committed people. Your twos are less competent, but they're still committed. And leadership has to be built on this. Your fours are your UFOs, uncommitted, freeloading observers. Your threes and your fours are your competent, uncommitted people. And that is where 80% of your problems come in leadership. What? They're competent, uncommitted. Didn't I say that?
The 3 and the 4 are the other way around.
Oh, what, on your?
Three is not committed and not competent.
In the past, he's two.
And 4 is not
Okay.
committed and competent.
Leave the competence to me this morning. So this is where so many people, and I want to tell you something, you can train committed people, but you can't make competent people committed if they're not committed. If it's not in their heart to be committed, they're not going to be committed. And I've got to confess to you as the pastor, it took me years before I understood this. Because this is where most of my heartache came from. Trying to work with unloyal, disloyal, uncommitted people that won't take responsibility. They're good enough, they can do the job, but they won't take responsibility. If you change this word commitment to responsible, responsible. So that's really, to me, you know, because I'm committed to Christ. Listen, it's impossible to be committed to Christ if you aren't committed to people.
Yes.
And I'm convinced it's impossible to be committed to Christ if you're not committed to his wife. I'm convinced of it. I can have a fantastic relationship with Josh, but if I can't stand Elaine, then we're not going to go very far, are we? Isn't it true?
Yes.
I love going round there and eating at Tony's house, but his wife drives me up the stinking wall. You know, then I'm not going to go round at Tony's house, am I? See, if you don't like the church, if you don't like God's wife, if you're not committed to the house, then that's where you're going to stay. A competent, capable, efficient, effective, uncommitted person. And as soon as there's a problem, you're going to book. Nobody enjoys puberty. Does everybody remember puberty? Oh, this is wonderful. You know, zits and hormones and everything goes wrong and emotional swings and roundabouts. And, you know, it sucks. It's the worst part of your life. I don't care what anybody says. Because you're so confused. You don't know if you're a child. You don't know if you're an adult. You don't know anything, you know. And so this is the whole point. Is when somebody's paused on puberty and refuses to go through the discomfort and the pain of puberty in the spirit, they stay there for the rest of their spiritual lives. And what happens with kids at that age when there's a problem, what do? They run away into their room and put headphones on, right? Don't listen. And so if you're paused on puberty, that's Hebrews 6:1, you can check that out. Causing adolescent runaways. I'm so glad this guy helped nail, you know, this driftwood in the Hudson Valley and let me understand it. Now the reference to the adolescent runaways, of course, is the prodigal son. Just an adolescent runaway wanting to do his own thing. Okay, so next line, you have to go through it to mature. You have to go through adolescence, and adolescence is the most painful part of growth. And I want to say this to you, and this is something because there's a few of you in the room, not too many. Sometimes when your children are going through adolescence, you can't help them. You have to let other mature people help them. This is why, I don't know about you, I mean, we raised our children without any relatives, as you know, because all of our 5 kids, no cousins, no uncles, no aunts, no grandparents. So therefore, when you wanted another voice, you know, I didn't have Uncle Jonah to talk to them or something like that, you know, it was very difficult. Because this is why we need the body of Christ. And the body of Christ is a time when you need people to talk to you, talk you through these difficult situations. and learn to work as a team. So if you're having a problem with somebody you're leading, try and get somebody else to have a word with them. You know what I'm saying? This teamwork is essential. Okay, you have to go through it to mature. The best example I've got, of course, was King David. King David went from 0 to hero to 0. Right? He went from a nobody, the least liked child in the family, to anointed to king, to beating Goliath, to being in the king's house, to having spears thrown at him, running away and living in a cave like a dog.
Yeah.
Right? I'm telling you, this is a ministry pattern. You go 0, hero, 0. Then you begin to take the responsibility of what you're called to do. God's watching what you do when it's your time in the cave. And if you start getting mean towards leadership, this is the biggest test of all. This is what we have to do politically as well. If you start getting mean against leadership when you're in a cave, then you're going to stay there. You're going to stay there and you'll never learn to shave. You'll never get through puberty. Alright. Next part. Everybody wants to reach people until it's time to reach people. This is something we really have to deal with as leaders. Somehow, you have to be the ones that are handing out those cards that Beth makes. You have to be the ones that are inviting people to be church. You have to be the ones that are striking up conversations, you know, in the supermarket, at work, wherever you are. You just have to be the ones. If you want to take the city for God, there will be casualties. I thought the best example of this, anybody ever see that movie about Teddy Roosevelt when he took that hill and... Was it Puerto Rico? Where was that hill he took? Cuba? Cuba. Thanks, Sean. There was a great movie of Teddy Roosevelt on his horse. You've probably seen pictures taking the hill, you know. They took the hill, but they didn't catch a lot of casualties. You know, Normandy, they took the beaches, but I tell you what, there's a lot of dead bodies. You have to expect casualties in this war. You have to expect it. Don't get offended because somebody gets muddy grubs, won't learn to shave and just gets mad at you and leaves. That happens. It happens. Because there's a test, there's pressure. Life is great because you've been in the palace. You've been, you were the king's musician. Now you're in a cave. And who are you going to blame? Can't blame God, can't blame yourself, obviously. So therefore it must have been the leader who put you there. Is everybody listening? Okay, HNL, whole nother level. If you want to go to a whole nother level, you are going to meet HND, a whole nother devil. The story down there in 2 Samuel 5:17, it's the story about when King David was anointed king over Israel. What does it say? As soon as the Philistines heard that David was anointed king over Israel, they came up against him. Same verse. As soon as you begin to take responsibility for God, as soon as God begins to anoint you for leadership, as you begin to take that step of faith, trust me, the Philistines will be after you. The Philistines will be after you. Can't remember what my other Acts 19 reference is. That's your homework. Okay, let's turn over. One thing I was reminded of last week, something Andy Elms says. If most of you have met Andy Elms, the great pastor from Portsmouth, England. He says, if you're a leader, you must be ready to be moved. You need to be ready to be moved. Now, obviously, if you've got a specific job that you like, for instance, we've got Nicole Carlino right now has taken a hold, spearheading the Love 146 ministry. Well, that's a specialized